Hello guys, welcome to the next session of Understanding Java 8 Features. In this session, we are going to talk about one of the most important feature of Java 8, that is a Stream API. So in this session, we are going to cover every single possible scenario which comes around the Stream API. But before continuing this session, I will highly recommend you to go through my previous session which was related to the Lambda expression, because in the Stream API, we must have to use some of the Lambda expressions. So having knowledge of Lambda expression before continuing with this session will help you to understand Stream API in a more deep manner. So I will provide the link into a description box, and I will provide link into this right hand side corner as well. So in this session, we are going to cover four most important topics about the Stream API. So initially, we are going to understand what is the Stream API. Then we are going to understand what are different important methods that we must have to aware about which presents into a Stream API. Then we are going to understand how we can use Stream API and different methods on some of the wrapper classes, let's say the integers. And then lastly, we are going to understand, let's say if we have some of the custom classes, let's say person or employee, then how we can use these Stream API and how we can perform different operations on the employee or person class with the help of this Stream API. So I'm going to cover every single scenario in a more deep manner. So before continuing with this, let's try to first of all understand what is stream. So stream is nothing but a pipe. You can consider it as a pipe from which your objects are passing. So let's say if we have 5 or 6 objects, and let's say if you want to perform the operation, then Java provides one concept that is called as a stream, and the stream is nothing but you can consider it as a pipe, and your all the objects will pass through that particular pipe. So whenever the objects passes through that pipe, we can perform different operations on every single object. So let me tell you all these things practically. So for this, let me just try to add one class into this package, that is com.youtube.java. So let me just add this class and let me just give the name as, let's say, a runner class. So over here we have just created one class, and now we have to just add one method. Let's say we can add the main method directly over here. So let me just add main method over here. Now first of all, we have to understand how we can create a stream. So let's say there are multiple ways, but most commonly used ways is one method, that is off method of stream class. So let me just tell you how we can use these. So we have to just use this stream class, which stream interface basically, which comes from java.util.stream package. So we have to use these. Then we have to just use one off method. So off method is basically a static method, so we have to use that off method, and then inside these brackets we can pass the different objects that we want to add into these stream. So we can add any of the objects. So let me just try to add 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 comma 5. Let's say if we have the 5 objects. Now these 5 objects are considered as integer objects. Wrapper class, we have already seen, like we have one wrapper class of integer. Now this off method is going to return us one stream, so we can store it into a stream. So let's say stream, and over here we have to just give a type. So let me just give the type as integer, and then let me just give the name as stream, like this. So in this way we can create one stream with the help of this off method. In our stream currently we have the 5 different objects of type integer, and we are storing all these stream and the objects into these stream variable or reference, you can say. So this is how we can create one normal stream. Now instead of these integer, you can pass any objects. You can pass string objects, you can pass double objects, or maybe you can pass the person or employee class objects. So you can pass anything over here. All these objects will become part of the stream. Now as we have this stream of the integer, we have to just make sure that we are just passing the integer values only. So let's say if we just try to add some double value, then it will start giving you the error, because we have clearly said that this stream will contain only integer values. So we have to make sure that whatever the type we are mentioning over here, the same type objects we must have to pass. So let me just remove this 9.7. So this is the one way we can create a stream of any objects. Now there is other way as well. So let's say if we are using some of the collection, for example, let's say set or list, then on the set and list there are different methods. With the help of those methods we can create a stream directly. So for example, as of now, let me just comment out this particular line, and then let me just create one list. So let me just create one list, let's say list, and that list will be of type integer, and we can give any name again over here is equals to new array list. And now let me just try to add some items. So list dot add, and let me just add 10, and in similar way let me just try to add 2 or 3 more items. So let me just add 20 and 30, like this. Now we have this list which is of type integer. Now with the help of this list we can create stream again. So let me just try to create these. So list, and there is one method which is called as a stream. If you see, this stream method takes no any parameter and it returns the stream of the integer. So over here, why it is returning the stream of the integers? Because our list is basically of type integer, so that's why it will return us the stream of integer. So let me just call this stream method, and now let me just try to save this into a stream of integers. So let me just try to save. So let me just give the name as stream over here. So you can give any name over here. So now if you see, these particular thing, like whatever we have wrote on line number 11 and whatever we have wrote line number 18 are doing exactly same things. So they are creating the strings, but the only one difference is we are creating stream directly over here, and on line number 18 we have one previous list, and with the help of that list we are creating list on line number 18. So there is only one difference, but at the end both of the outcomes are stream only. Now we just understood like how we can create a stream from let's say with the help of this off method, and let's say if we have list, so how we can create a stream again. Now before talking about the operations, or before starting looking into the operations, let me try to explain you what are the different operations that we must have to aware about. So let's say there are two different types of operations. So first type of operation is called as a intermediate operation. So let me just type intermediate operations or intermediate methods you can call. And then second type of operations are nothing but a terminal operations or terminate operations. You can call any with the any name. So terminal methods or terminal operations. Now inside this intermediate methods, we have again three different methods that we must have to aware about. The very first method is filter. I will just explain every single thing in a moment, but right now I'm just giving you the notes. I'm just giving you like what we have to understand. Then we have second method that is called as a map, and then we have the third method that is called as a sorted. And then inside these terminal methods we have again three methods. So we have very first method that is collect, then we have second method that is a for each, and lastly we have one more method that is called as a reduce. So each and every method have its own specific use. Each and every method mostly you will use whenever you will work on the stream API. So we are going to understand these intermediate methods as well and these terminal methods as well. So over here, to see how we can use these methods, first of all let's try to create one stream. So let me just try to remove this line number 14, because we will just stick with list only. So you can, if you want, you can just continue like with the help of stream dot off method, but as of now I'm just continuing with this list only. And with the help of this list we are just creating one stream as we have seen over here. Now let's say if we want to filter out some of the values from the list, so in such a cases we will use this filter method. So let's see how we can use the filter method first. So on this stream we have to call this filter method. So let's say I just want to filter out the values which are greater than 15. So as of now I'm just taking one example. We have values 10, 20 and 30, but among these we have to just filter out whichever value greater than 15. So how we will do this with the help of this filter. So over here On this stream we have to call operation. So let me just try to increase my font. Yeah, so over here we have to just call the operation. So let me just use stream dot filter. Now over here, if you see this method, which is filter, this method basically takes a predicate as a parameter. So predicate is nothing but one of the functional interface that we have seen in the last session itself. So over here, it nothing but it basically takes the lambda expression of type predicate. So we have to create this lambda expression first, so that we can pass this lambda expression as a parameter over here. So now let me just try to show you what the lambda expression will look like, which is of type predicate. So if you just go to the predicate interface, then predicate is a functional interface basically, and this functional interface contains one method test. This test takes one object as a parameter and it returns the boolean value. That means it will just take one object as a parameter and it will just return you true and false. So this is how we have to write the predicate. So let me just show you how we can write it, but this is the method that is going to execute behind the scenes. So over here we have to just write a predicate, then inside the brackets we have to specify a type on which we want to execute this predicate. So over here, if you see, our list is of type integer, our stream is of type integer. So that means we have to execute this predicate on integers itself. So let me just use integer as a type. Then we have to just give one name, and then we have to give our lambda expression. So before continuing with this lambda expression, we must have to understand what is type of object that it takes as a parameter. So if you see, there is one parameter which is of type integer, because we are just passing integer over here. So if you see into this predicate, you will see a t typed over here. So t is nothing but type of the input that this particular predicate is going to take. So this t can be anything. This t can be integer, this t can be person, employee, it can be anything. So we have to just specify inside these brackets as we have specified over here. So we have to pass one parameter. So let me just pass one parameter. We can give any name, let's say x, and then we have to give these two curly brackets, and then we have to give a body to this test method. So let me just try to give the body. So what I'm trying to say is whichever value, like let's say if x is greater than 15, then return true, otherwise return false. So how we can write this? So we have to just write if x is greater than 15, then return true, else return false. So we have to just write it in this particular way. Again, we can short this particular predicate in a one line, but as of now I'm just keeping it as simple as possible. How to short these and how we can reduce these number of lines, we will see the later, but as of now let's keep it as it is, and at the end we have to give this semicolon. Now our predicate is ready. We have to just pass this predicate to our filter method. So let me just try to pass this predicate to our filter method, and again we have to just give the semi-comma. Now if you see, this filter is again going to return us the stream itself. So if you see into this definition of filter method, you will see that filter will return us one stream again. So we have to just store it into a stream again. So let me just store it into stream of integers, like let's say filtered data, like this. And now what we can do is we can just create one list from this filter data. So over here, this is a stream. Just try to understand very carefully. This is a stream, but we cannot use stream directly while printing the data, or maybe while showing the data to the user. Again, we have to convert this stream into a list, so that we can show that list to our user, right? So this is how we have to use. So again, to convert this stream, we have one more method, that is collect method. So let me just use filter data dot collect, and over here we have to mention like in which collection you want to collect. So if you want to collect into a list, or if you want to collect it into a set or into a map, so whatever options we will choose, we have to just pass it over here. So as of now I'm just going to collect it into a list only. So over here we have to call one class, that is collectors, and then there is one method that is called as a toList. So we have to call this toList method. So let me just call it like collectors.toList, and this is going to return us one list. So let me just try to store this result into a list again. So that list will be again of type integer, because we are performing all these operations on integer itself. So that will be that list will be of type integer only, and we can give any name again over here. So let me just as of now give the name as data, like this. Now I know like we are creating very different list, very different predicate, very different streams over here, but as of now I just want to keep everything separate. In a moment we are going to grab it everything in a single line, so don't need to worry about this. And now we have at the end filtered data. So let me just try to print out this particular filtered data. So now let me just save these and let me just try to run these. Let's see what happens on the console. So on the console I'm expecting that it should return a value which are greater than 15. So over here if you see, our list contains 3 items like 10, 20 and 30, but on the console we are getting the values which are greater. So this is how basically we have to perform a filter operation. Now again, let me just try to show you how we can reduce every single thing, because as of now we just wrote a lot of different lines, we just wrote a lot of things over here. So let me just quickly show you how we can reduce these number of lines as well. So over here we have to just keep these lines, because obviously we have to create a list over here. Now if you see, like we are just creating a stream and we are just storing it into a stream variable or stream object, whatever you can say. And again we are just performing a filter operation and we are just storing it into a different stream. But instead of this, we can just perform the filter operation over here itself. So let me just try to quickly tell you like what I'm trying to say over here. So as of now, this every object, like we are storing it into a different references, like every single thing that we are storing it into a different references, but we can chain these operations. So stream API allows you chaining the different operations. So let me just try to explain what I'm trying to say over here. So over here let me just try to use these predicate and this filter method on this particular line itself. So we can obviously do that thing as well. So let me just try to comment out this line, and then let me just try to use the filter operation. So over here on line number 21 itself, let me just try to use a filter operation. So before that let me just remove this thing, and let me just try to use the filter operation. So over here we have to just use list.stream, and then on that stream itself we can call this filter method. So this filter again will require this predicate. So let me just cut this predicate and let me just paste it after a list creation, so that this particular predicate will be accessible into this below filter method. So let me just pass my predicate over here, and again this filter is going to return us a stream. So we can again chain our this collect method. So on this filtered stream we have to call the collect method. So let me just call this collect method, and let me just give collectors dot toList, and at the end this last operation, that is collect, is going to return us a list, because we have mentioned over here like I just want all these filter data into a list. So at the end we can store it into a list. So let me just store it into a list of integers, or let me just make it as data itself. And lastly let me just try to print out the data. like this. So I hope you are getting like how we are just chaining this particular operation. So first of all, we are just calling the stream method on the list. This stream method is going to return us a new stream. Then on that stream we are just calling a filter method. That filter method is again going to return us a stream, and on that filtered stream we are just calling a collect method. At the end, this collect method is going to return us a list, and that's why we are storing the end result into a list, and after that we are just printing the list. So now again, let me just save every single thing and let me just try to execute this thing. Output will be the same, but it is like, if you just see, like output is 20 and 30, but there is only one difference. Like whatever we were doing previously in these three lines, now we are just able to do this into a single line. So this is how we can just change the different operations. So I hope like you are getting like how this filter method basically works. So we have to just make sure that we are writing the predicate over here. Now again, instead of creating this predicate like this, and instead of passing this predicate like this, what we can do, we can just short this predicate, and we can just pass this entire predicate lambda expression inside this filter method parameter itself. So let me just show you how we can do this as well. So over here, instead of creating this predicate like these 4 or 5 lines long, we can just shorten this predicate as well. So let me just try to remove this. First of all, let me just try to remove these references, and let me just copy this lambda expression, and now let me just pass it into a filter method directly. And again, we have to just remove a semi-comma. So if you see over here, I have just gave a semi-comma, so let me just remove the semi-comma as well. And now if you see, every single thing is working perfectly fine. So instead of creating the filter, instead of creating the predicate, and instead of storing that predicate lambda expression into a predicate reference and passing that reference, what I just did is I just passed this lambda expression directly inside this particular a filter method bracket. Let me just save this and let me just try to execute this again. Let's see what happens on the terminal. So again, on the terminal there will be no any difference, but only one difference is like we just avoided one step over here. We just shortened this number of lines. Again, we can short this particular thing. So what we can just do is, instead of using these a lot of brackets, and instead of using these return true, return false, in the last session itself we have already seen that how we can um, how we can uh, shorten this particular predicate. So let me just do one thing. Let me just remove this entire if else block, and let me just do one thing. Let me just remove these curly brackets as well, and let me just remove the opening curly bracket as well. And over here, let me just give one condition like x should be greater than 15. So this is how we can just shorten this lambda expression. Now over here, what it is what basically going to do is, it is going to do the same thing. Like if x is greater than 15, it will return true, or else it will return false. So this is how it will basically work. Now let me just save these and let me just try to run this code. Let's see what happens on the console. So on the console we will get the same output, that is 20 and 30. But now if you see, like whatever operations we were performing, like with the help of 8 or 9 or 10 different lines, we are just now doing this into a one single line itself. Now I hope you are getting the idea like how this filter method basically works. Now the next operation that we have to understand is this map operation. So let's talk about the map operation. So map operation basically is basically helpful when you want to perform or apply some rules on given object. So what I'm trying to say over here. So let's say if we have the objects like let's say 10, 20 and 30, and if you want to perform any rule, or if you want to like give any rule to these 10, 20 and 30, or if you want to convert these 10, 20 and 30 into a different values, then you can use the map operation. So over here, let me just tell you with the help of example. Let's say whatever filtered data I will get, I just want to square that data. So on the console, as of now, we are just getting these 20 and 30. Let's say I just want to square these values like 20 and 30. So this is my requirement. So in this case, what we are doing is we are just applying one rule on this filtered data. We are just applying the rule like I just want to square. So we are just taking one number and we are just squaring that particular number. So in such a cases where you want to apply some rules on data or any kind of objects, then we can use map method of stream API. So how we can do this? So as of now, let me just comment out this line, that is system.out.println, and let me just remove this collect method as well. So now after filtering data, let's say I just want to square the values. So we have to just call one method, that is a map. And again, if you see, the map method takes one parameter, and that parameter is again a lambda, which is of type function. So let me just quickly tell you about the function. So basically, function itself is a functional interface, and let me just try to open this function. So if you see, function is again a functional interface. It contains one method, that is apply method. That apply method takes one object as a parameter, and then it returns the object as a returned value. So it takes one object and it returns one object. So what we can do is we can just give one object as a parameter, then we can apply some rules, then we can perform some operation, and again whatever value we want to return, we can return that particular value. So now let me just show you how we can use this map method to square this filtered data. So let's say, again, let me just remove this function that I just typed over here. Again, inside this map we have to pass a lambda expression. So how we can pass it? Like in this particular similar way we can just pass it. Again, let me just try to create it separately, and then we will just use like shortened way. So let me just use function, and then we have to first of all inside the brackets provide the parameter type. So we are going to pass a integer value, and then we have to provide a return type as well. So I'm just going to return integer again. So we are going to give the integer, and we are going to take the integer as well. So this particular first integer is for showing like what type of parameter we are passing, and this integer is basically to show the return type after performing the operation. And again, we can just give any name, let's say function. Then we have to give these brackets. Inside the brackets we have to pass one argument, because it takes one argument. Again, we can give any name, x, y, z, you can give any single thing. And then let's say whatever x value I will get, I just want to square that value. So it is basically like x into x. And now this particular function, we can just pass it as a parameter like this. And at the end, after performing this map operation, because map also returns us a stream, so again we have to collect this result into a list. So let me just call this collectors dot to list. Now let me just use the system.out.println, and let me just try to print this data. And now let me just try to print this data. Let's see what happens. On the console, I'm expecting that it should print 400 and 900, because if you see, like after filtering the data, we will get the values like 20 and 30, and after squaring the 20, the answer will become 400, and after squaring the 30, the answer will become a 900, and these values are getting printed on the console in a successful way. So now this is how we can use the filter method, and we can use the map method as well. Again, instead of passing the variable over here, what we can do is we can just reduce one line. Again, instead of passing the variable, we can pass these lambda expression directly. So let me just try to cut this, and let me just try to paste this lambda directly over here, and now we can just remove this particular line as well. So now we can just save this, and let me just quickly try to execute this. Again, output will be the same, but we just reduced a one line in this way. So this is how we can use this filter, map and collect method. And now let's try to understand how we can use the sorted method as well. So sorted method is really very simple. So as you can just think, or as you can just understand with this name, like sorted method will help you to understand, help you to sort out your all the elements or all the objects. So now let's say, let me just try to first of all shuffle these values. So let's say, let me just try to change these values as, let's say, 25 and then 5, and then let's say let me just keep it as let's say 17, like this. And now let me just try to execute it as it is. So let's see what happens on the console. So on the console it is now printing like 625 and 289, so it is printing these particular values. But let's say I just want all these values in a sorted order. So there is nothing to worry about. We have to just call one method that is called as a sorted method. So where we want to call this method, so after calling this map, at the end we have to just call this sorted method before collecting the result, so that whatever sorted values we will get, that values only we will collect into a list. So let me just call this with the help of let's say, let me just try to remove this because I don't want anyone to confuse. So let me just use map dot, then we have to call this sorted. And again, in the sorted we have the two different options. So the first option takes no any parameter, the second option takes a comparator. So when we want to use the comparator, let's say if we have any custom data types like employee or person or student, so in such a cases we have to use the second option, the sorted method, which takes the comparator. So I will tell you the reason as well, but as of now let me just try to use the sorted first method like this. And again, at the end we have to just collect it into a list. Now let me just save these and let me just try to run this code. Let's see whether we get all the objects in a sorted way or not. And now if you see, we are just getting the values like 289 and 625. So all these values we are getting in a sorted order. So this is how this particular sorted method will work. Now why we haven't used comparator for this sorted? So that is most important question again. So now if you just go to this integer wrapper class over here, if you see, like it is just implementing a comparable over here. And obviously, like as it is a class which is obviously provided by the Java itself, so Java is handling every single thing about this. So Java is handling how this integer object should be sorted, or how these objects should work while we want to perform any kind of sorting operation. So every single thing is already handled into this integer class itself. So that's why we don't need to worry about this. But let's say if we have any custom classes like employee or student or person, then in such a cases Java will not take the responsibility. So we as a developer have to take the responsibility, and we have to handle these logic of like how these objects should be sorted and everything. So I will just explain you that as well, but as of now we have to just keep these things in a mind. So now we have just understood like filter operation, map operation and sorted, and then we understood this collect operation as well. Now there is one more operation that we must have to understand, is a for each, and then lastly we have to understand this reduce as well. So let's try to first of all talk about this for each method. So for each method will basically help you to perform any operation on every single object. So let's say in our cases what we are doing is, we are just collecting the result into a list, and we are just printing the data as we are doing on line number 20. But for this, what I have to do is, I have to just collect this into a list, and let's say I have to store it into a list type or list reference. And then with the help of this data, like with the help of this reference name, we have to print the data. So let's say if I just want to avoid this particular line, and if I'm not going to use this list again in my application after printing the data, so we can avoid this particular line as well. So what we can just do is, we can just, let's say my intention is just to print the values and no more, I just require all these values. So I just want to print the values and nowhere, no elsewhere I just require this data. So instead of collecting into a variable, what I will just do is I will remove these, and I will remove the system.out.println as well. And now what I will just do is I will remove this collect line as well. So let me just remove this, and now after the sorted, we can call a for each method. So for each method again will take one lambda expression which will be of type consumer. So let me just quickly show you how the consumer basically looks like. So consumer takes one parameter, a consumer contains one method, that is accept method, and it takes one parameter of any type. So if you can see, it takes one parameter of any type, or it takes one object as a parameter, but at the end it returns nothing. So if you see, like, it returns nothing, that means our for each is not going to return us anything. So it will just take this, take the parameter, and it will not return any single thing. So we have to write a consumer as well, so that we can pass the consumer over here. So again, that consumer will be of type integer, and we can just give the name as, let's say, consumer. And this consumer is going to take one parameter, let's say x. Again, you can give any name obviously, and on that x we are just trying to call system.out.println, and whatever x value we will get, we will just print that particular value. And now let me just copy this name consumer, and let me just pass it to the for each. Now if you see, this for each is not going to return us anything, it is just going to return us a void. So we cannot call any single operation of after this for each, because for each will return us nothing. So that's why we cannot call any single operation. So that's why it is a terminal operation. I will just explain you what is terminal and intermediate, but as of now we can keep this in a mind. Now let me just save these, and let me just try to run this. Let's see whether we are able to print all these values or not. And if you see, all these values are printed, like 289 and 625, but there is only one slight difference. Previously, whenever we were trying to print the value, it was printing it like a list, but as of now we are not collecting all these values as a list. Instead, we are just printing the every single value. So whatever value will be we will get after the sorted, that value will get printed. And again, you can perform any operation with the help of for each. As of now, I'm just trying to print this value. So again, we can just reduce these. Instead of creating this consumer and variable and every single thing, what we can just do is we can pass this lambda directly as a parameter to the for each method, like this. And let me just try to remove this as well. And now let me just save this code, and let's see what happens. Again, output will be obviously the same, but we have just reduced a one line from our code, so output is pretty same. So we just understood the for each method as well. Now lastly, we have one more method, that is a reduce method. So now let's say when we want to use a reduce method. So reduce method will help you to reduce your entire result and collect all the entire result into a one single variable. So for example, let's say as of now I'm just getting these 289 and 625, two different values on my terminal, but I don't want two different values. I just want one single value, like let's say addition of these two values. So I just want addition of these two values, and obviously addition of these two values will be a single value, right? So that will be like only single value. So in such a cases we can reduce this. So what we are just doing is we are just reducing our result into a single variable. So we can in such a cases we can call this reduce method. So we have to just remove this for each, because we will not be able to perform any operations after the for each, because for each will not return us anything. So let me just remove the for each method, and after this sorting out the method, we have to just call method, that is a reduce method. And again, there are lot of variations of reduce method. But let me just quickly show you how we can use one of the variation as well, because over here if you see we have three different options, and the three different reduce methods takes different parameters and different lambda expressions. So let me just quickly tell you one scenario or one um, basic reduce operation that we oftenly use. So we have to first of all pass h0. So I will explain every single thing, but let me just try to write it. And let's say I will just make it as num1 comma num2. So over here we have to just pass one lambda expression, and let me just give a arrow, and then let me just make num1 plus num2 like this, and at the end we have to just give a semicolon. Now after this reduce, so let's see first of all what reduce is basically going to return us. So reduce is basically going to return us one single value. If you see, it is it is mentioned that it is going to return us one single value. So if you want, we can just collect this single value into a integer variable. So why integer? Because after performing all these operations, it is going to return us integer only. So let me just try to store it into a integer. So let me just try to store like result like this. And now after the result, we can just print the result as well. So let me just use system.out.println and result. So let me just save this first of all, and then I will just explain you this reduce method, like how this reduce method is going to work. So if you see, it is now printing one value, that is 914. So 914 is basically addition of this 625 and I think 289 or 284 something. So it is the addition of both of these two values that we were getting previously. So what it basically doing is, it is basically initially we are just taking the value 0, and now whatever values it will get, it will just add those values. Like as of now we are just giving this name as num1 and num2, like this name like x we are just taking for the lambda. So in similar way we are just taking these values like num1 and num2. You can give x comma y, a comma b, any single name. We are just taking this addition, like we are just making the addition of num1 and num2, and again that addition will be stored, or that addition again will be added into the 0. So as of now, let's say, let me just try to increase the values so I can explain you in a more precious way. So in our list, let's say if we have two more values, let's say 16 and list comma add, let's say 18, and then list comma add, let's say 21. So let's say we have this much values. Now let me just try to run this first of all. Let's see what kind of output we get on the console. So on the console we are just getting the output like 1935. Now over here what it is doing is, first of all it is just filtering all the values which are greater than 15. So it will just filter out these values. So we will get 25, then 17, 16, 18 and 21. So instead of except these 5, all the values will be filtered out. So after filtering, it will just every single operation. So 25 square, then 17 square, 16 square, 18 square and 21 square. And again we are just sorting all these values in a ascending order, and now we are at the end we are just saying like I just want to reduce this value. So after sorting out, let's say if we get some values, then all these values will be added, and at the end that addition will be stored into this it will not stored, but it will just add. So first of all it will just take two values. So let's say 25 and square of 25 and 17, like num1 and num2. It will add those values like whatever square we have. For example, let's say if I just try to write it over here, so it will first of all take square of 25, then square of 17. It will just make addition of square of 25 and square of 17, and whatever answer will come, it will store it into x, it will store it in instead of this 0. And again it will take next two values, let's say 16 and 18. It will make square of it, and it will just add these square of these 16 and 18. and again whatever result will come, now it will just update that particular result. So it will be a chain, and it will keep updating values, it will keep adding the values instead of these zeros. So it is bit difficult to explain, and it a bit hard to explain this reduce operation, but I hope you are getting the small idea, at least a small idea of the reduce operation. So in short, let's say whenever you want to like collect, whenever you want to just um, reduce your list, whenever you want like you want one single value from your entire operations, then in such a cases we can use this reduce operation. So I hope you got an idea around this. Like we have covered almost every single operation, like filter, map, sorted, then collect as well we have already seen, then we have seen this for each, and we have already seen this reduce. Now let me just tell you why these operations called as a intermediate operations, and why these particular operations are called as a terminal operations. So all the intermediate operations will always return us one stream. So over here, if you see, the filter is going to return us a stream, then map is going to return us a stream, and the sorted is going to return us a stream. So if you see, we can just use this operation in between, like in between. So if you see correctly, we are not using these operations at the end, we are not using these operations at the start, we are using all these operations in an intermediate state. So that's why these operations are called as intermediate methods, because all these methods all these methods are going to return us a new stream, and again we can perform new operations on the existing stream. So for example, whatever stream filter will return, on the same stream we can perform a map operation. Again, whatever stream this map operation will return, we can perform sorted operation on the stream. So we can keep going with the help of we can keep going, and we can just keep calling these different operations. So that's why these operations called as a intermediate operations. But at the end, if you see, like collect method, for each method, then reduce method, we cannot perform any single operation after this reduce method or collect method or for each method. So that's why these operations are called as a terminal methods, because after calling this collect, for each or reduce, we can perform further operations, because this is the end. At the end, like we are just calling this, and after collecting the result, after calling the for each method, after calling the reduce method, we don't have any option, we will not be able to perform any operations. So that's why we cannot uh, we cannot perform any operations, and that's why it is called as a terminal methods or terminal operations, because this is these operations are used to terminate our API, terminate our stream, or terminate our stream of different objects. So that's why these operations are called as a terminal operations. So I hope you got an idea around this one, like how we can use these operations. Now let me quickly tell you how we can use all these operations on our custom classes, because we have just used one wrapper class, that is a integer class. But in some of the cases you will not only use the integer or float or double wrapper classes. In most of the cases you will create your own class, and you will you try to use these operations on your own class. So let me quickly tell you how we can use the different operations on our custom classes. So for the demonstration, I'm just going to create one class, that is employee. So let me just create one class employee quickly, and inside this employee, let me just try to take three different parameters. So let me just try to take private, let's say integer employee id, then private employee name, and then private employee salary. So I'm just going to take these three values. Now let me just try to create a getter setters as well, so that it will be very easy to us to access the values. So let me just try to generate the getters and setters, and in similar way let me just try to generate the constructor as well. So let me just try to generate a constructor, and now let me just save every single thing, and now let me just go back to our runner class. And now let me just remove this entire code, and over here first of all just try to create some objects. So I'm just going to create objects of employee. So employee e1 is equals to new employee, and we have to just give employee id. Then let me just give the name, let's say my name Bharat, and then let me just give the salary as, let's say, you can just give any salary, 0.7, like this. And now let me just create some objects. So let me just create e2, e3. Let me just change this employee id. Let me just change name to, let's say, Raj. Let me just change the salary of Raj, let's say 4,000.5 something. And now let me just change the employee id for third employee, and now let me just give the name as, let's say, Harsh. And then now let me just change the salary, let's say 6,000.56, like this. So now we have three different employees, and now we can just add them into a list, or we can just directly create a stream with the help of stream.off method. But as of now, let me just try to create a list itself. So list will be of type employee is equals to new array list, and let me just call list dot add e1, then e2, and e3 we have to just add. So let me just add e2 and e3. Now let me just save this code. Now over here we want to perform again different operations, but before performing the different operations, at the end let me just try to print out the list. Now let me just try to print the list, and now let me just save this code. Let me just try to run this code. Let's see what happens on the console. So on the console now, if you see, it is not actually printing all these values like employee id, name and salary. It is printing some hash codes or object codes. So the reason behind this is, if you want to just print the object with the help of system.out.println, then we have to override the method that is a toString method. So let me just override this toString method inside of my employee class. Let me just save these, and let me just go back, and let me just try to run this code again. And now it should print something on our console. Now if you see, it is printing all the details like id, name and salary, and it is printing all the three different employees. Now let's say from this employee I just want to filter out, like, let's say whosoever having the salary greater than 5,000. I just want to filter out those employees only. So again we can do this with the help of stream API. So with the help of stream API we have to just call list dot, and we have to just call the method like filter, or first of all we have to just create a stream. So we have to create a stream, then we have to call a filter, and again the filter is going to take a predicate as a parameter. We have already seen that how we can shorten the predicate, so I'm not going to explain this again, but we have to just pass one parameter, let's say x, and then x dot get employee salary should be greater than 5,000. So employee's salary should be greater than 5,000. Now at the end we can just collect the result into a list. So let me just call a list, I mean collectors dot to list. Now over here this is going to return us a new list, so we have to just store it into a new list itself. So let me just try to store it into a list. Again we have to create a new list which will be again of type employee itself. So now let me just give the name as filtered list, like this. And now let me just try to print this filtered list. So let me just try to print this filtered list. So let me just save this, and let me just try to run this. Let's see what happens on the console. Now if you see on the console, it is printing like employee id 1, and if you see the salary is 8,999, and then employee id 3, and if you see the salary is 6,000. So our filter condition is working perfectly fine over here. Now let's say let me just try to run this code again, and now let's say if I just want to change this particular cases, so if I want to apply one rule, like whatever values I will print on the console, I just want the name should be printed in uppercase. So this is my new rule. And now if I just want to apply some rule, then in such a cases we can use a map method, because map method takes one um, argument and uh, returns any object. So we can perform this operation with the help of map method. So over here we have to just convert this Varad into a uppercase, and similarly for the Harsh as well, we have to just apply the rule and we want to convert this into a uppercase. So how we can do this? We have to just call a map method. So when we have to call this map method, after filtering out the results, we have to call the map method. So we have to just call a map, and now again this map is going to take one function lambda as a parameter. So what we have to do is we have to just take one parameter, say x, because we have already seen like how we can pass the lambda to the map. So I'm not going to explain anymore, I'm just trying to use it as it is. So now we have to take one parameter and then we have to return like we have to return a new object, or we have to return a object after applying some rule. So we have to just return a new employee object, and inside this we have to like give every single x dot get employee id. Then we have to just take x dot get employee name, but this employee name should be in the uppercase. So what we can do is we can just pass to uppercase method and comma, then we have to just take like x dot get employee salary. So I will just explain you what I'm trying to do over here, but at the end we have to just collect this result. So let me just use collectors dot to list. So over here what it will do is it will just take one employee as a parameter, and then when it will take this employee as a parameter, then it will create a new employee object, and inside the constructor it will just pass the existing value. So let's say if after filtering out the data, it received map function received this particular like employee even, so it will receive all the values like 1, then Bharat, and then 8999. So in this case we don't want to change the 1, the employee id will remain same, the salary will remain same. So that's why we are just passing this as it is, like employee id and employee salary, but we just want to perform the operation of operation on employee name. We just want to convert it into a uppercase, so that's why we are just calling uppercase to uppercase method on this employee name. So from this x it is going to create a new employee, and it is going to return us newly created employee. So we are applying the rule. So what we are saying is to the map method, like we will pass you one employee, just take that employee and just convert the name into a uppercase, and after converting it just return us the new employee. So this is what we are telling to this map function or map method over here. Now let me just try to save this. Let me just run this code. Let's see what happens on the console. So on the console, if you see, now we are getting this employee name and like employee name for Varad in a uppercase and employee name for Harsh in a uppercase as well. Now again, this is how this map method will work. Now let's say if we want to just perform the sorting operation. So if you see, like if you see the employee salary, it is having 8999 and Harsh is having 6000, but we want to just sort these employees based on their salaries. Again we can just do this with the help of stream API. So now after this map we have to just call one method, that is a sorted method. And now if you see, we have the two different options. So let's try to first of all just call our normal sorted method. So there is no any parameter over here. Now let me just try to run this code. Let's see what happens on the console. So now if you see on the console, we are getting one exception, and this exception is basically due to like Java is not be able to understand how to sort these values, because previously we were using the integer value or integer wrapper class, and as the integer is provided by the Java programming language itself, so Java programming language was able to handle the integer values. But over here this employee is created by us, so Java will not take any responsibility to handle the employee. So that's why we have to take responsibility, and we have to just tell like how this employee should be sorted. And for this, if you see, we have one more option for this sorted method, and this sorted method basically takes the comparator as a parameter. So for this we have to generate one comparator as well. So how we can do this? So we have to create one more class, let's say employee comparator, employee comparator. So this class will implement the comparator interface, and again inside this comparator we have to pass our type. So we just want to compare the employee object, so that's why we have to just pass employee over here. Now we are getting the error. So this is why, because this comparator interface contains one abstract method, and that abstract method we must have to override. So this compare method we must have to override. So let me just select this compare method, let me just try to override this compare method. And now we have to just do one thing over here, we have to just remove this 0, and we have to just write o1 dot get employee salary minus o1 dot get o2 dot get employee salary. So we have to just use o2 dot get employee salary. Now over here if you see, like you are getting one error. So this is why, because over here a compare method returns integer value, but as these salaries are in the double, so the result at the end result will be in the double, and we cannot return double value from over here. So we have to cast this into an integer. So casting is very simple, just do one thing, just take every single thing like o1 dot get employee salary minus o2 dot get employee salary, and just paste it into a bracket. So just cover it with the help of bracket, and after the bracket, like after the return keyword, just type integer like this. And now let's write this integer in the bracket as well. So it will basically convert our double value into an integer, and this is basically called as a casting. And now how this o1 and o2 are coming, like o1 and o2 are of type employee. So over here we are just mentioning like we want comparator for employee, and that's why this o1 and o2 are coming of type employee automatically. So whichever type you will mention over here, that type of parameter you will get in this case. And in over here we are just trying to compare this with the help of salaries. So like let's say if our first object has the greater salary, then it will return one integer, for example let's say 1. And let's say if our o2 is having greater salary, then it will return a 0. So with the help of this 1 and 0, it will be going to compare the values. Now let me just save this code, and now let me just come back to my runner, and now let me just try to call the sorted method. And now we have to just go with the second option. Inside the brackets we have to pass object of our comparator. So let me just use new employee comparator like this. And now let me just save this code, let's see what happens on the console, like whether we get result in a sorted format or not. And now if you see, Harsh, which is having 6,000 salary, is coming at the first place, and Bharat, which is having 8,999 salary, is coming at the second place. So now we are able to compare our values, and we are able to sort these employees based on their salaries. So this is how we can use the comparator, and this is how we can use this sorted method. And now if you see on line number 25, we are just printing the value, and we are nowhere using this filtered list. So instead of creating this variable, and instead of wasting one more line, what I can just do is I can just remove every single thing from over here. So let me just remove this list employee filtered list is equals to sign, and let me just remove the system.out.println as well, and let me just remove this collect as well, because I don't want to collect the result, because I just want to print the result. So in such a cases we can just use a for each, and again for each will take one parameter because it takes the consumer lambda expression. So we have already seen like how we can use a consumer, and then it will just print whatever object or whatever value it will get. So again let me just save this code. Let's see what happens on the console. So on the console again it will just print the values like employee uh, details in a sorted order. But if you see, now it is not printing all these values as a list, it is just printing all these values as a separate values, because now we are not connecting collecting all these values in the list, we are just printing all the values. So this is how basically the stream API works, and I tried my best to cover every single possible scenario that comes around the stream API. But if you still have any questions, let me know into a comment section, and I will try my best to help you out in that case. So over here we tried a lot. I know this topic is bit confusing, but at the same time this feature is really very useful. So if you are familiar with the stream API, you can perform lot of operations in a single line itself. So if you see, like if you just try to perform these kind of operations with the help of conventional way, or with the help of like a for each loop or for loop, so if we just try to perform these operations in a conventional way, then in such a cases we have to write a really very long code. But over here we are just performing these operations in a single line, or in a minimum number of lines. So this is how this filter map on and every single method will work. So I hope you got an idea around this stream API, and I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you in the next session.